That Sengun Adams lineup this season, I wonder how much we're going to see it against Golden State, because on one hand, you could say the Warriors will shred them to death. They have all this outside shooting. They're going to play fast. They'll bring those guys out to the perimeter and exploit a too big lineup. But on the other hand, you look at the success Adams and Sengun have had this season, plus 29.9 net rating in 162 minutes. They grab 51.4% of offensive board opportunities when they're on the floor. And even in the lineups with just Adams, it's like well over 40%. It's one of the greatest offensive rebounding seasons we've ever seen. Thinking Basketball made a video about him recently, and it's just like spot on. Adams had an unbelievable permanent year on the boards, and it's part of what makes Houston's offense so effective in those non-Sengun minutes or the minutes with Sengun. So I think for Golden State, the real key to the series, the real swing factor, in my opinion, we know that they're going to do everything possible to get Steph going. They're going to do everything possible to get Thompson off of him and all that. We'll talk about that in a second, but controlling the boards is going to be of the utmost importance. I don't think Sengun or Adams are going to go 4 of 11 on shots right at the rim.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like, if you look at the way those Sengun-Adams, the reason that thing works offensively is because they generate so many offensive rebounds. Like, they have 122 offensive rating with those two together. And part of that is just because they crash the offensive glass like crazy, and they're able to just get more opportunities than the other team. To your point, I wonder how often we see that lineup, because it's something they've tried relatively recently. You mentioned, I think it was like 162 minutes together. That feels like it's a new thing for me. I've really only seen it post trade deadline, post All-Star break, them really trying to lean into this double big lineup of Sengun and Adams. And I guess the question you have is, all right, how much are you going to put Adams in space? How much are you going to put Sengun in space, and see how he can work with either Jimmy or Steph Curry working in isolation to try and score against them? Warriors aren't a heavy isolation team, but if they go at Sengun and Adams the way that they did Edey in that first half, it could spell trouble for the Rockets. That said, like, even one of Adams or Sengun are really great offensive rebounders. They crash the glass. They play much bigger. And like you said, they finish in and around the basket more. I think my question is, like, how are those two going to look offensively, putting pressure on the Warriors on the inside, right? Because yes, Golden State has Draymond Green. Yes, they're able. Like, are they going to have to put Looney out there? Looney did not look that great last night in the minutes that he played. Is he going to have to be a part of their rotation next season? Are we going to see Jonathan Kuminga just from a size perspective? Does the Warriors' rotation change now because they're playing a much bigger team?
You know, that part's going to be interesting, because if you look at the last Houston Golden State matchup, when Steph had 3 points and Thompson just shut the water off for him, it was one of the most dominant individual defensive performances of the entire season, what Thompson did against Steph. In that game, I felt like Sengun scored on whoever they put on him. Against Draymond, Sengun felt too big, too strong. And then against Looney, he was too quick. And so for Golden State, Draymond is going to have a monster series defending Sengun, because I don't think Looney is going to be able to elevate to the level necessary to contain a borderline All-NBA guy, or potentially an All-NBA guy in Sengun. So that's a question there. On the defensive side, you mentioned how much are they going to try to pull Sengun and Adams out to the perimeter? I'm sure they're going to try to do it a lot, because they're going to try to get Thompson off of Steph, try to get Dillon Brooks off of Jimmy Butler. But like, this is like a lot of names. Fred VanVleet did really well against Steph in the past Raptors finals. Granted, there's injuries on the Warriors side, but VanVleet did well in the past. Dillon Brooks has done well against Stephen Curry as well. Thompson, as I just said, had one of the better games. He's been one of the better Steph defenders ever since he entered the NBA, especially this year in his second year. So they have a lot of guys they can throw at Steph, a lot of guys they can throw at Butler. And even if their bigs are pulled out to the perimeter, they just have a flat out better defense than Memphis. Memphis's defense stinks. So like, you have size, you have Jabari Smith and Tari Eason on the back line to help. I feel a hell of a lot better about Houston's ability to support a big pulled out on the perimeter than Edey on an island against Jimmy Butler. Like, he's hopeless. But Sengun and Adams, they have support behind them that makes me feel a lot better about Houston in this series.
The thing that catches my eye with the Rockets defense is just how great they are at recovering out. And they're so good at springing into action. So if there is some sort of lapse defensively, you mentioned it, Thompson is one of the best at kind of getting into that area where he can just cause havoc. Same thing with Dylan Brooks, who does a great job at the point of attack. I have a stat here. So the Rockets are the fourth best team at defending cuts in the NBA. They generate or allow only 1.24 points per possession on cuts. And that's one of the best in the NBA this season. So I think obviously the Warriors are a great cutting team. They use split actions to get Jimmy and Steph going a lot. That's something that I think will be a question in this series just because of how great the Rockets are at occupying space off of the ball and roaming around, especially Amen Thompson. How the Warriors are able to get advantages for their guys, especially Steph, off the ball. That's the question that I have with this Rockets team. The other thing I wanted to ask you, Kevin, all right? So this Warriors defense has been legit, right? Number one since they added Jimmy Butler. They've been awesome at defending. And the Rockets generally have not been a good clutch time team. They're 18th in offensive rating, 19th in fourth quarter net rating. The Warriors, on the other hand, 7th best offense, 1st best defense, 4th best net rating in that fourth quarter. You look at Steph Curry and what he did last night versus the Grizzlies. You have a guy who you can rely on every single time. And I think this will be one of those series where every game is going to go down to the wire. Every game is going to be very close because the Rockets defense will keep them at a striking distance. The Warriors defense will find a way to work. And generally, it's going to be a lot of close games. How are the Rockets going to score in the fourth quarter? That's the main question that I have for this team offensively.
Yes, and that is 100% the primary concern with Houston, because even in their games that they win against Golden State this year, they're scoring just in the 100s. They're holding Golden State to 90. Can you do that over a 7-game series?
Exactly.
Is going to be the big question. And so, I mean, for Houston, man, look, if they lose this series, or even if they win and they lose in round 2, I think no matter what, the story about Houston entering this offseason will be, well, how do you add more scoring? Because I don't think they're going to win the finals. Like, I don't think they're going to 0-4 Pistons their way to an NBA Finals trophy at the end of the year, hoisting it up. Fred VanVleet and Jabari Smith and Dylan Brooks, all these guys. I just don't see it happening. I think some of the other teams are just flat out better, but their defense is legit. But can they score enough? I don't know, man.
I don't.
You don't think so?
It's tough. I don't think they can. And exactly. Rockets fans have to deal with Steph Curry. That's the way that it's going to go in this series. And you know how Steph lights up when he plays in Houston. I think that's a big factor. There's a lot of history there between both of these teams, which, I don't want to get into the missed threes part of it, but that's just
0 for 27. Yeah. Poor Rockets
fans. 27, man.
Think about that. Yeah. You know that highlight's going to be played on the broadcast at some point.
Can you imagine going through an entire rebuild and then getting back to the playoffs only to have to face Steph Curry again? That's wild.
The one name we haven't mentioned, we talked about Sengun with what he needs to bring. We haven't talked about Jalen Green, who's had some major highs this season. Stretches of averaging over 25, almost 30 points per game, super efficient. Where's your trust level in Jalen Green in his first playoff experience?
We'll see is my trust level. I think this is going to be an awesome learning experience for Jalen Green, just because defenses will be keyed in on him for a whole 7-game series. And especially this Warriors defense, who I don't think is the greatest point of attack defense, but between Moses Moody and Gary Payton II, they have guys that they can throw at the point of attack to make things tough on Jalen Green. You look at what Jalen did in their last matchup. He was awesome in that second half. He just caught fire, shot tons of threes, was creating off of the bounce. That's the version of Jalen Green this Rockets team needs against the Warriors. They need him to be a guy who's aggressive, who's hunting out his own shot, who's saying, hey, this is my turn to kind of make my name here in the NBA, and I'm going to make the most of this opportunity. This is a big pressure point for Jalen Green right now. Can you take that next step in your career? Can you be a guy who can lead a playoff team as their number one scorer, or are you going to struggle under the lights, right?
So Vegas has Golden State favored as of now, and we'll see how that changes before game one on Sunday.
Interesting.
I'm a little surprised that Golden State's so heavily favored as a 7 over 2. I feel like Houston has played Golden State very well this season. We just saw a couple weeks ago what Thompson did to Stephen Curry, harassing him all game, holding him to only 3 points, super inefficient. He's been good against Steph in every matchup this year. And again, a 7-game series of playoff intensity is different than regular season games. Golden State is going to be game planning to take him away. But you know this, covering the Raptors, what happened in the finals in 19. There was a lot of attention on Stephen Curry, making everybody else beat you. And with Houston and Udoka's defense and the amount of bodies they can throw at Stephen Curry, my guess is we're going to see a hell of a lot of tension at Stephen Curry trying to make literally everybody else beat you, which I think makes it a Jimmy Butler series. Will Jimmy Butler be able to step up and have high 30s or high 20s like he did in the play-in game? Or will he just fade away like he did in that matchup against Houston where they needed that secondary score and he didn't bring it? So that I think Butler's going to have to be the guy who has a massive series in order to get through Houston, which is funny because like Houston was the team everybody was talking about maybe trading for Jimmy Butler. And then he goes to Golden State. Hometown kid, right? So here we are with these two teams matching up. So I think that's going to be one of the keys here. You mentioned Kuminga as well. Will he play in the series? Will they need his athleticism? Of course, this year he's not playing for a reason. They're minus 6.1 in minutes that Kuminga and Butler share the floor. When it's just Jimmy out there with any other lineup, they're plus 10.8 net rating. So they've been bad with Kuminga out there. I do wonder if we'll see him at some point. And I think we will see him at some point because my series prediction is Houston in 6. I'm taking Houston in the series, and I think we're going to see some changes from Golden State throughout the series in order to match the youth and the athleticism and the energy that the Houston Rockets defense brings. I'm really a believer in Houston's defense, and with Golden State, I do worry about them having enough shooting around Stephen Curry. It's a lot to ask from Steph in a series, and look, we'll see. They have a lot of bodies that can throw Jimmy Butler as well. So that's my prediction. Houston in 6. What do you got, S?
I like that. I like it. I agree that it's going to be a long series because I think people are discrediting the Rockets a little bit too much. They played awesome basketball to finish this season. They've obviously been like an incredible defense. So you don't want to discredit that aspect of this team. And I think they will pose some challenges for the Warriors. I'm going to go ahead and say Warriors in 7. I think it will be a very, very close series. And maybe that's a cop-out answer, to be honest with you, because 7-game series, you never know how it's going to go. But Warriors in 7 feels like the pick for me just because, look, when it comes down to it, when it comes down to the fourth quarter, and like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of close games in this series where the deciding factor will be who ends up being more clutch, who ends up, having that gene. And I just trust Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler more than I do Jalen Green or Sengun or Fred VanVleet. I've seen the Rockets really wither in those type of situations all season. And I think that's the thing that I'm expecting to be their Achilles heel in this playoff series as well. So I'm going to go with Warriors in 7. Would not be surprised if the Rockets end up, shocking the world here and pulling off what feels like an upset at this point, according to bettors. But yeah, I think that's where I would go. Warriors in 7.